The red sun of Xerion Prime burned hot above the rocky hills. Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his face as he watched the rebel camp through his binoculars. The place looked like a fortress carved into the mountainside. Guard towers stood at every corner. Armed aliens walked back and forth on the walls. Jake lay flat on his stomach behind a large boulder. His military uniform was torn and dirty. Blood had dried on his left arm from a cut he got earlier, but he did not care about the pain. All he could think about was the alien queen trapped inside that camp. 3 days ago, everything had gone wrong. The peace talks were supposed to be simple. Humans, Veltherans, and 5 other alien species would meet on this neutral planet. They would sign papers and shake hands. Or whatever aliens did instead of shaking hands. Jake was there as security, nothing more. But the rebels attacked during the ceremony. They came from nowhere, shooting energy weapons that turned rocks into glass. Most of the diplomats ran to their ships and flew away fast. The human ambassador, Carl Baker, grabbed Jake's arm and shouted over the noise, "We have to go, now." Jake looked back at the burning meeting hall. "What about the Valtheran Queen?" "Not our problem," Baker said, pulling him toward their ship. "We tried to help." That's enough, but Jake saw her. Queen Zarathiel was fighting 3 rebels at once with some kind of energy sword. She was good, but more enemies kept coming. Jake watched her get hit by a stun weapon. She fell to the ground and did not get up. The rebels picked her up and carried her away. Baker kept pulling Jake toward the ship. Other humans were already running up the ramp. "The engines were starting." "Sir," Jake said, "we can't leave her." "Morrison, that's an order. Get on the ship." Jake looked at the ship. Then he looked at the mountains where the rebels were taking the queen. He made his choice. "Sorry, sir." Jake ran the other way. That was 3 days ago. Now he was here, alone, watching the rebel camp. His radio was broken. His ship was gone, but the queen was in there somewhere, and Jake was going to get her out. He had been watching the camp for 2 days. He knew the guard patterns now. At sunset, most of the rebels would eat dinner in the main hall. Only 6 guards would be left outside. That was his chance. Jake checked his weapons. 1 energy pistol with half power left, 4 small explosives, a combat knife, and a roll of medical tape he had found in his pack. Not much, but it would have to work. The sun was getting lower. Jake crawled closer to the camp. His plan was simple. Maybe too simple. But humans were good at simple plans that worked. First, he would use 2 explosives to blow up the power generator. That would kill the lights and alarms. Then he would climb the back wall while the guards ran to see what happened. Find the queen. Get out fast. Jake reached the generator building just as the sun touched the horizon. He could hear aliens talking and laughing in the main hall. Perfect timing. He placed the first explosive on the generator and set the timer for 30 seconds. The second explosive went on the backup power unit. 20 seconds, Jake ran to the back wall and started climbing. The rock was rough and gave him good handholds. He was halfway up when the explosives went off. Boom! Boom, the camp went dark. Aliens started shouting in their language. Jake could not understand the words, but he knew panic when he heard it. He climbed faster. Guards ran toward the generator. Their flashlights made crazy shadows on the walls. Jake reached the top and rolled over. The courtyard below was chaos. Perfect. He dropped down and ran toward the main building. Logic said the queen would be in the most secure place. That meant the underground cells. Jake found the entrance to the lower levels. Stone steps led down into darkness. He pulled out his flashlight and started down. The steps were wet and smelled like mold. At the bottom, he found a long hallway with metal doors on both sides. Prison cells. Jake looked through the small windows in each door. Empty. 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 Then, in the last cell, he saw her. Queen Zarathiel sat on the floor with her back against the wall. Her royal clothes were torn and bloody. Burns covered her arms and face, but her eyes were still alert and angry. Jake tried the door. Locked, of course. He placed his third explosive on the lock mechanism and stood back. The small explosion echoed through the hallway. The door swung open. The queen looked up at him with surprise. "Human, why are you here?" "To get you out," Jake said. He helped her stand. She was weaker than she looked. "My people? Gone. Everyone ran when the rebels attacked. But you stayed." "Yeah, well." Jake did not know what else to say. "Can you walk?" She nodded, but Jake could see she was hurt bad. They started up the stairs together. The queen leaned on his shoulder. Above them, the shouting was getting louder. And closer. "They will block the exit soon," the queen said. Jake thought fast. The main entrance would have too many guards. The back wall was too high for the injured queen to climb. But there was another way, a dangerous way. The old mining tunnels, he said. I saw them on the mountain maps. They lead to the other side of the peak. Those tunnels are not stable. They could collapse. Better than staying here, they reached the ground level. Through the windows, Jake could see rebel guards searching the courtyard with lights. Time was running out. Jake led the queen to a small door he had noticed during his watching. It opened onto a narrow ledge that ran along the mountainside. Below them was a drop of 1,000 feet. Stay close to the wall, Jake whispered. They moved carefully along the ledge. The queen's breathing was getting worse. Behind them, lights appeared in the doorway. The rebels had found their trail. There, the human and the queen. Energy blasts hit the rocks around them. Jake pushed the queen forward. Move! The entrance to the old mining tunnel was just ahead. A dark hole in the mountain face with rotted wooden supports. It did not look safe, but it was their only chance. Jake helped the queen into the tunnel and followed her. Behind them, the rebels reached the ledge and started shooting into the darkness. The tunnel was narrow and smelled of old explosives. Water dripped from the ceiling. Their footsteps echoed strangely. How far? The queen asked. Maybe a mile. Maybe 2. They walked deeper into the mountain. The sounds of pursuit faded behind them. But new sounds started. Creaking wood, shifting rocks. The mountain was not happy with their presence. Jake, the queen said suddenly. She had been calling him Lieutenant Morrison before. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this. A loud crack echoed through the tunnel. Dust fell from the ceiling. Jake looked up and saw a wooden support beam bending under the weight of the mountain. Run, he said. They ran through the darkness. Behind them, the tunnel started to collapse. Rocks fell like rain. The sound was deafening. Jake saw light ahead, the exit. But the ceiling was coming down fast. They were not going to make it unless Jake stopped running. He pulled out his last explosive. What are you doing? The queen shouted. Making sure you get out. Jake shoved the queen toward the exit and stayed behind. He placed the explosive on the largest support beam and set the timer for 10 seconds. Go. Now. The queen reached the exit and turned back. Jake, no. But Jake was already running the other way, deeper into the tunnel. The explosive would bring down this section and stop the collapse from spreading. The queen would be safe. The timer hit 0. The explosion was enormous in the enclosed space. The tunnel came down like an avalanche. Jake was running toward a side passage when the rocks caught him. Pain, darkness, silence. The last thing Jake heard was the queen calling his name from far away. But she was calling from outside the mountain. She was safe, that was all that mattered. Queen Zarathiel stood at the window of her palace and looked out at the city below. 5 years had passed since Zerion Prime. 5 years since Jake Morrison saved her life and died doing it. But she remembered everything like it happened yesterday. The rescue teams had found her sitting outside the collapsed mining tunnel. She was covered in dust and blood, calling Jake's name into the pile of rocks. They dug for 3 days but found nothing. The mountain had swallowed him completely. The queen touched the scar on her face where the rebels had burned her. The doctors wanted to remove it, but she said no. Let it stay. Let her remember the price of peace, Your Majesty. Zarathiel turned. Her advisor, Captain Veltar, stood in the doorway. He was an old soldier with gray skin and kind eyes. The morning reports, Majesty. The Morrison Protocol training is going well. Our young officers are learning fast. The Morrison Protocol. That was what they called it now. The fighting style Jake had used to rescue her. Quick thinking. Bold action. Never give up. Even when everything looks hopeless. Very human ideas, but they worked. Good, the queen said. What else? The Order of the Fallen Star wants to build another monument. This time on Kepler Station. Zarathiel nodded. The Order of the Fallen Star was her creation. A group of soldiers and civilians who studied human ways of thinking. They built monuments to Jake on 12 different worlds now. Always the same message. He died for someone not of his own kind. Other species thought it was strange. Why honor one human so much? But Zarathiel understood. Jake Morrison had done something that changed everything. He showed that some people would die for strangers. Not for money or power or glory. Just because it was right. Tell them yes, she said. But make it simple. Jake would not want anything fancy. Captain Veltar made a note on his data pad. The council meeting is in 1 hour, Majesty. They want to discuss the human problem again. The human problem. That was what the other species called it now. Ever since Jake's story spread across the galaxy, everyone was worried about humans. They were unpredictable. They did not follow the normal rules of war and politics. They might do anything. What happened this time? The Queen asked. A human trade ship refused to pay bribes to the Zephyrian customs office. When they tried to arrest the captain, she disabled their computers and flew away, left a message saying corruption was wrong and she would not support it. Zarathiel almost smiled. Very human. Did she hurt anyone? No, Majesty. Just embarrassed them. But the Zephyrians are angry. They say humans think they are better than everyone else. Maybe they are. Captain Veltar looked surprised. The Queen had been saying things like this more often lately. The Council worried she was getting too friendly with humans. Majesty, I know Jake Morrison was a good man, but not all humans are like him. Are you sure? Zarathiel walked to her desk and picked up a data pad. This is from Ambassador Baker, the human who ran away from Xerion Prime. He sent his official report about what happened. She read from the pad. Lieutenant Morrison disobeyed direct orders. His actions risked human lives for no strategic gain. His sacrifice was noble but pointless. The rebellion would have released me eventually as part of negotiations. Zarathiel put down the pad. Baker thinks Jake died for nothing. That makes me angry. But Majesty, maybe the ambassador has a point. Jake Morrison was just one man. You cannot judge an entire species by one person. Watch me. The Queen walked back to the window. In the square below, young Veltharan soldiers were practicing human fighting methods. Quick movements. Creative thinking. Never give up, it was working. Last month, Veltharan forces stopped a pirate attack using Morrison protocol tactics. Instead of following standard procedures, they did something unexpected. They pretended to retreat, then attacked from a different direction. The pirates never saw it coming. Veltar, do you know what the other species say about us now? That we are becoming too much like humans, Majesty. Good. Maybe we need to be more like humans. Captain Veltar looked uncomfortable. Majesty, the Council thinks you are letting emotions cloud your judgment. They say you feel guilty about Jake Morrison's death. Zarathiel turned around fast. Her eyes flashed with anger. Guilty? You think I feel guilty? I did not mean... I feel grateful, Veltar. There is a difference. The Queen sat down at her desk. On it was a small piece of rock from the Xerion Prime tunnel. The only piece of Jake Morrison they ever found. Every morning I wake up alive because a human I barely knew decided my life was worth more than his own. Every day I rule this empire because Jake Morrison thought some things were more important than following orders. And every night I wonder if I am worthy of that sacrifice. She picked up the rock and held it in her palm. The other species do not understand humans because they only look at what humans do. They do not ask why humans do it. But I was there, Veltar. I saw Jake make his choice. He did not save me because his leaders told him to. He saved me because he thought it was right. But Majesty, that kind of thinking is dangerous. If everyone just decides for themselves what is right, then maybe we get a galaxy where people actually do what is right instead of what is safe. Captain Veltar was quiet for a moment. Then he said, The Council will not like this kind of talk, Majesty. The Council can learn to live with it. Zarathiel stood up and walked to a wall covered with maps of the galaxy. Red pins marked places where humans lived. There were not many. Humans were still a young species, small and weak compared to the old empires. Look at this, Veltar. Humans have been in space for less than 200 years. Most species need 1,000 years just to leave their home systems. But humans are already everywhere, making friends and enemies and changing everything they touch. That is what worries the Council, Majesty. It should worry them, because humans are not going away. They are growing stronger every year. And we have a choice to make. Zarathiel pointed to a blue pin on the map. Earth, the human homeworld. We can be afraid of them like everyone else. Build walls and make rules to keep them away. Or we can remember that one of them died to save one of us, and maybe that means something. The Queen walked back to her desk and sat down. Tell the Council I will attend their meeting. But first, bring me the Morrison files. Which files, Majesty? All of them. I want to review everything we know about human psychology and tactics. If we are going to work with humans, we need to understand how they think. Captain Veltar bowed and left. Zarathiel was alone again with her memories and her guilt and her plans. She opened her desk drawer and took out a small metal star. It was the symbol of the Order of the Fallen Star. On one side was Jake's name. On the other side were words in the old Veltharan language, death before dishonor. But Jake had not died for honor. He had died for something harder to understand. He had died because he could not live with himself if he did not try to save her. That was the thing about humans that scared other species so much. They had this crazy idea that some things were more important than staying alive, and they were willing to die for strangers to prove it. The galaxy was not ready for that kind of thinking. But maybe it needed to be. Zarathiel put the star back in the drawer and called for her military advisors. It was time to make some changes. The Morrison Protocol was just the beginning. If humans thought differently than other species, then maybe Veltharans should learn to think differently too. After all, the human way of doing things had worked once. On Xerion Prime, when all the smart and careful diplomats ran away, one crazy human had stayed and saved the day. Maybe it was time to be a little more crazy. The Queen smiled as she made her plans. Somewhere in the collapsed tunnel on Xerion Prime, Jake Morrison's body lay buried under tons of rock, but his ideas were still alive. And they were spreading. The other species called it the human problem, but Zarathiel had a different name for it. She called it hope. The alarm bells were ringing when Captain Veltar reached the space station. His ship docked fast and he ran through the halls toward the medical center. Other Veltharan officers were running too. Everyone had heard the impossible news. Jake Morrison was alive. Veltar found Queen Zarathiel in the medical bay, staring through a window at something inside. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. "Majesty," Veltar said quietly. "Is it really him?" The Queen did not answer. She just pointed through the window. Veltar looked inside and felt his breath catch. On the medical table lay a human male, but something was very wrong. Metal pieces were fused with his skin. Wires ran under his flesh like silver veins. His left eye was gone, replaced by a glowing red sensor. Scars covered his body from head to toe, but his face, even changed like this, it was definitely Jake Morrison. "How?" Veltar whispered. "A cargo ship drifted into our space 3 hours ago," the Queen said. Her voice sounded strange and far away. "The New Haven. It was damaged and running on emergency power. When our patrol boarded it, they found the crew dead. All except one person in a medical pod. Him. Dr. Yaren, the chief medical officer, came out of the treatment room. She was a small Veltharan with blue skin and 4 arms. Right now, all 4 arms were shaking. "Majesty," she said, "I have never seen anything like this. The cybernetic implants are beyond our technology. They are keeping him alive, but I do not understand how they work." "Will he live?" the Queen asked. "He is stable for now." "But, Majesty, he is more machine than organic at this point. Whoever did this to him, they rebuilt him from the inside out." Zarathiel pressed her hand against the window. "When will he wake up?" "Soon, I think. His brain activity is increasing." The Queen turned to Veltar. "Clear this level. I want only essential medical staff. And get me a secure communication link to the capital. The Council needs to know." "Yes, Majesty, but what should I tell them?" "Tell them the legend just became real again." Veltar left to make the arrangements. Zarathiel stayed by the window watching Jake sleep. 5 years of believing he was dead. 5 years of carrying his memory like a weight on her heart. And now he was here. Changed beyond recognition but alive. Inside the medical room, Jake's red eye suddenly opened. Dr. Yaren was checking his vital signs when she noticed the change. "Majesty, he is waking up!" Zarathiel rushed into the room. Jake's human eye opened next, blinking slowly as he tried to focus. When he saw the Queen, he tried to sit up. "Easy," Dr. Yaren said, pushing him back down gently. "You are safe now." Jake's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Dr. Yaren held a cup of water to his lips. He drank a little and tried again. "Zara." His voice was rough and strange, like it was coming through a broken radio. "I am here, Jake." The Queen moved closer to his bed. Up close, she could see the metal implants more clearly. They were beautiful in a terrible way, like silver jewelry fused with living flesh. You are older," Jake said with something like a smile. 5 years older. "We thought you were dead." Jake's red eye flickered and made soft clicking sounds. "Maybe I was. Hard to tell. What happened to you? Who did this?" Jake closed his eyes and was quiet for a long time. When he opened them again, he looked confused and scared. "I remember. Falling rocks, pain. Then darkness for a long time. Voices speaking in a language I did not know. Machines working on me, but it is all mixed up, like a dream inside a dream." Dr. Yaren was scanning him with a medical device. She frowned at the readings. Majesty, these implants are storing massive amounts of data. His brain has been enhanced, but I cannot access the information without risking damage to his mind. Data about what? The Queen asked. I do not know. The technology is completely alien to me. Jake tried to sit up again. This time, mechanical systems under his skin helped him. Servos whined softly as he moved. There were others, he said suddenly, in the deep places under the mountain. They found me in the rocks and put me back together. But they changed me. Who were they? I cannot remember clearly. Old, very old. They said they had been waiting for someone like me. Like you how? Jake touched the side of his head where metal and flesh met. Someone who would sacrifice himself for another species. They said it was rare. Worth saving. Queen Zarathiel felt a chill run down her spine. Jake, what do you remember about the cargo ship? How did you get there? I was in the deep places for a long time. Healing, learning. Then one day they said it was time to go. They put me in the ship and said I had to warn you. Warn me about what? Jake's red eye flickered faster. The metal implants under his skin began to glow faintly. The hegemony, the old species that rule from the shadows. They are coming for you, for all the young races. Dr. Yaren stepped back in alarm. Majesty, his energy readings are spiking. Something is activating in his implants. Suddenly, Jake's body went rigid. His red eye blazed brighter and began projecting images into the air above him. Holographic displays showed star maps, fleet movements, and alien faces the Queen had never seen before. The attack on Xerion Prime was not random, Jake said, but his voice was different now. Colder, more mechanical. It was a test. The hegemony wanted to see how the younger species would react to crisis. The images changed, showing massive spaceships hidden in the dark between stars. They have been watching us for centuries. Humans, Veltherans, all the young races. When we become too strong, they eliminate us. How do you know this? The Queen asked. The ancients told me. The species that saved me. They used to rule the galaxy before the hegemony drove them underground. They have been hiding and waiting for a chance to fight back. The holographic display showed a timeline stretching back thousands of years. Species rising and falling, always in the end, destroyed by the same shadowy force. The hegemony is preparing for the final harvest, Jake continued in his mechanical voice. They will attack all young species at once. Humans first, then Valtherans, then the others. They want to rule an empty galaxy. Dr. Yaren was frantically checking her instruments. Majesty, the energy output is dangerous. He could burn out his nervous system. But Zarathiel was focused on the images. When will they attack? Soon. The ancients do not know exactly when. But they sent me to warn you. To give you a chance to prepare. The holographic display flickered and went out. Jake collapsed back onto the medical bed, breathing hard. His red eye dimmed to a soft glow. Did that really happen? He asked in his normal voice. Or did I dream it? It happened, the Queen said. She was thinking fast, trying to process everything she had just seen and heard. I am sorry, Jake said quietly. I know this is not what you wanted. Having me come back like this, more machine than man. Zarathiel took his hand. His skin felt warm despite all the metal underneath. Jake Morrison, 5 years ago you saved my life by walking into a collapsing tunnel. Today you may have saved my entire species by walking out of one. I think I can forgive you for being a little different. Jake smiled, and for a moment he looked like his old self. Still trying to save people who are not my own kind. Maybe that is exactly what we need, Dr. Yaren cleared her throat. Majesty, we need to run more tests. And someone should examine that cargo ship. If Jake was placed there by these ancients, there might be more information. Do it. And Dr. Yaren, everything you have seen and heard in this room is classified at the highest level. Understood, Majesty. The Queen turned back to Jake. Rest now. When you are stronger, we will talk more about what you remember and what we need to do. Jake nodded and closed his eyes. Within minutes he was asleep. But his red eye continued to glow softly, like a star in the darkness. Zarathiel stood by his bed for a long time, thinking about legends and reality and the strange way fate worked. 5 years ago, she had lost Jake Morrison and gained a hero to remember. Today, she had gained him back but discovered that the galaxy was in more danger than she had ever imagined. She looked at the metal implants under his skin and wondered what other secrets they contained. What else had the ancients taught him during those 5 years underground? And was he still human enough to help them fight what was coming? Outside the medical bay window, stars shined in the darkness. Somewhere among them, the hegemony was planning the end of everything she cared about. But Jake Morrison had come back from the dead once. Maybe he could do it again, this time for an entire galaxy. 2 weeks after Jake's return, Queen Zarathiel sat in her private study reading reports that made her stomach hurt. The investigation into the New Haven had found things that changed everything. Dr. Yaren knocked on the door and entered with more data pads. The medical officer looked tired. She had been working day and night to understand Jake's implants. "What did you find?" the Queen asked. "The cargo ship was not from any known human colony," Dr. Yaren said. "The metal used in its construction is older than human civilization, possibly older than Veltheran civilization too. Ancient technology." "Yes, Majesty. But that is not the strangest part." The ship's computer contained historical records. Battle reports from wars that happened thousands of years ago, and they mentioned species that we thought were myths. Dr. Yaren activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing alien races the Queen had never seen before. Tall beings with crystal skin, creatures made of living energy, others that looked like walking trees. "These are the ancients," Dr. Yaren continued. "According to the records, they once ruled a peaceful galaxy. Different species worked together, shared technology, explored the universe as friends. What happened to them? The hegemony. A group of the oldest species decided that peace was weakness. They started a war that lasted for centuries. Most of the ancient races were destroyed. The survivors went into hiding. The Queen studied the images. And they have been underground all this time? Yes, waiting for the right moment to fight back. And they think that moment is now." Dr. Yaren switched to a new display showing star charts and fleet movements. "The hegemony has been planning this for a long time, Majesty. They let young species develop just enough to become useful. Then they attack. They take the best technology and destroy the rest. How many times have they done this? According to these records, at least a dozen times over the last 10,000 years. Humans and Veltherans are just the latest targets." Queen Zarathiel stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the city looked peaceful and normal. Children played in the parks. Merchants sold goods in the markets. No one knew that their entire way of life might end soon. "What about Jake?" she asked. "What have you learned from his implants?" "He is more than just a messenger, Majesty. The ancients put something in his brain. A complete database of hegemony technology and tactics. If we could access it safely, we would know how to fight them." "Exactly, but the process is dangerous. Jake's human brain was not designed to hold that much information. Trying to download it could kill him." The Queen was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What does Jake think about this?" "He says to do it. He says he did not survive 5 years underground just to hide important information when people need it." "Of course he did." The Queen almost smiled, still trying to save everyone. "There is something else, Majesty. Something Jake remembered during his last medical session." Dr. Yaren activated another display. This one showed a map of local space with several systems marked in red. The hegemony has been building secret bases in these systems. Hidden fleets, weapons platforms, supply depots. They are almost ready to attack. "How long do we have?" "Months, not years. Maybe less." The Queen felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. Everything Jake had told them was impossible to verify independently. But if it was true, and they did nothing, millions would die. "Dr. Yaren, I want you to prepare for the data extraction from Jake's implants, but do not proceed until I give the order." "Yes, Majesty." After the doctor left, Zarathiel was alone with her thoughts. She activated her personal communication system and called Captain Veltar. "Veltar, I need you to arrange a secret meeting with the human leadership. Use back channels. Do not let anyone else know. Majesty, the Council will not approve contact with humans, not after the recent incidents. The Council does not need to know. Not yet. This is dangerous, Majesty. If word gets out that you are making deals with humans behind the Council's back, then I will deal with those consequences when they come. Right now, we have bigger problems." 3 days later, Zarathiel met with Ambassador Carl Baker in a secret location on the border between human and Veltheran space. Baker was the same human who had run away from Zerion Prime 5 years ago. He looked older now and tired. "Your Majesty," Baker said with a formal bow, "I was surprised to receive your message. Relations between our species have been difficult lately." Ambassador Baker, I need to tell you something that will sound impossible, but I need you to listen with an open mind. Zarathiel told him everything. Jake's return, the ancient technology, the hegemony threat. Baker listened without interrupting, but his expression grew more skeptical with each word. Your Majesty, he said finally. With respect, this sounds like science fiction. Ancient underground species? Secret galactic conspiracies? Are you sure this Jake Morrison is who you think he is? Maybe someone is playing an elaborate trick. I considered that possibility. But the evidence is real, Ambassador. The ship he arrived in uses technology we have never seen. His implants contain information that no human could know. Even if I believed you, which I am not saying I do, what could we possibly do about it? Humans and Veltherans together have maybe 100 warships. If this hegemony is as powerful as you claim, we cannot win by fighting them directly. But we might be able to win by fighting them differently. What do you mean? The Queen activated a holographic display showing battle plans that came from Jake's memories. The hegemony is old and set in their ways. They expect young species to fight using standard tactics. Line up your ships, shoot at each other until someone wins. But humans do not think that way. Baker studied the display. These are Morrison protocol tactics, adapted for space combat, and exactly. Quick strikes, unexpected moves, never give up even when everything looks hopeless. Very human ideas. And you think that might work against an enemy that has conquered the galaxy dozens of times? I think it is our only chance. Baker was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was serious. Your Majesty, even if I wanted to help, I do not have the authority to commit humanity to a war. Especially based on the word of one man who may not even be entirely human anymore. Then get me someone who does have that authority. That would be President Martinez. But she will never agree to meet based on what you have told me so far. Zarathiel thought about this. What if Jake came with me? What if he could demonstrate the technology himself? That might help. But it would also be incredibly risky. If this is some kind of trap. Ambassador, 5 years ago, Jake Morrison risked his life to save mine. He had no reason to do it except that he thought it was right. Now he has come back from the dead to warn us about a threat that could destroy everything we care about. I am willing to risk believing him. Baker looked at the battle plans again. Some of the tactics were familiar from human military history. Others were completely new. If we did this, he said slowly, if we somehow convinced President Martinez to work with you, we would need to keep it secret from the other species. If they found out humans and Veltherans were making military plans together, they would panic and make things worse. Yes, I know. And if this hegemony exists and we attack them first, we might start a war we cannot win, or we might prevent a war we would definitely lose. Baker turned off the display and looked directly at the Queen. Your Majesty, why are you trusting me with this? I am the man who ran away and left Jake Morrison to die. Because you are also the man who feels guilty about it. Guilt makes people careful. And right now I need careful people making careful decisions. Baker nodded slowly. I will contact President Martinez, but I cannot promise anything. I understand. But Ambassador? Tell her that Jake Morrison is alive and he has something important to say. Use his name. After 5 years of humans feeling ashamed about Xerion Prime, maybe it is time they felt proud instead. After Baker left, Zarathiel returned to her ship and flew back to the medical station where Jake was recovering. She found him in the rehabilitation center, working with Dr. Yaren to test his enhanced abilities. Jake was lifting weights that should have been impossible for a human to move. His cybernetic implants gave him strength and speed far beyond normal limits, but it came at a cost. After each exercise, he looked tired and confused, like the machines in his body were taking over his mind. How are you feeling? The Queen asked. Like I am becoming someone else, Jake said honestly. The implants are changing how I think. Sometimes I remember things that I never learned, knowledge from the ancients, but sometimes I forget things that were important to me. Do you still remember why you saved me? Jake smiled, and for a moment he looked like his old self, because it was the right thing to do. That part is still me. Good. Because I may need you to do it again, on a much larger scale. The Queen told him about her meeting with Ambassador Baker. Jake listened and nodded. So we are really going to do this. 2 small species against the rulers of the galaxy. Unless you have a better idea. Actually, I might. Jake's red eye flickered and began projecting new images. The ancients gave me more than just information about the hegemony. They gave me plans for weapons that could level the playing field. The images showed designs for ships and weapons unlike anything the Queen had ever seen. The catch. President Elena Martinez stood on the bridge of the human flagship Liberty and watched the impossible sight outside her window. 50 human ships flew in formation with 50 Veltheran vessels. 6 months ago, she would have called this a fantasy. Today, it might be the last hope for both their species. Status report, she called to her officers. All ships ready? Madam President, replied Admiral Chen. The joint crews are working better than expected. Turns out humans and Veltherans think more alike than we realized. That was Jake Morrison's doing. He had spent months training both species to work together, sharing ancient knowledge and Morrison protocol tactics. The cybernetic implants in his brain made him the perfect teacher. He could access any piece of information instantly and explain it in ways both species could understand. But the process was killing him slowly. Every day he became more machine and less human. Sometimes he would forget to eat for days. Other times he would stare at empty space and speak in languages no one recognized. Where is Morrison now? President Martinez asked. Engineering deck with Queen Zarathiel. They are making final adjustments to the ancient weapon systems. Martinez nodded and walked to the communication station. Get me a ship-wide channel. When the light turned green, she spoke to the combined human and Veltheran fleet. This is President Martinez. In 1 hour, we will attack the hegemony stronghold at Nexus Station. For thousands of years, they have ruled the galaxy from the shadows, destroying any species that grew strong enough to threaten them. Today, that ends. She paused and looked out at the alien ships flying beside her own. 6 months ago, humans and Veltherans were strangers who barely trusted each other. But we learned that some things are more important than old fears. We learned that from Jake Morrison, a man who taught us that courage is not about being unafraid. Courage is about doing what is right even when you are terrified. In the engineering section, Jake was connecting the final power coupling for the ancient weapon when he heard the president's speech over the ship's communication system. Queen Zarathiel was working beside him, her 4 hands making delicate adjustments to the targeting system. She is talking about you, the Queen said. She is talking about all of us, Jake replied. But his voice sounded strange and mechanical. The implants were taking over more of his mind every day. Jake, are you sure you can handle the weapon interface? The ancient technology requires a direct neural link. If your implants overload, I will be fine. Jake's red eye flickered. I was built for this, remember? The ancients designed these implants specifically to operate their weapons. Queen Zarathiel touched his arm gently. Under his skin, she could feel the metal moving like living things. You were not built for this, Jake Morrison. You were rebuilt for this. There is a difference. Is there? Sometimes I cannot tell anymore. Before the Queen could answer, alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Admiral Chen's voice came over the speakers. All hands to battle stations. Hegemony fleet detected. They are moving to intercept us. Jake and Zarathiel ran to the bridge. Through the front window, they could see enemy ships appearing out of hyperspace. Massive vessels that looked like they were grown rather than built. Organic curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with dark energy. How many? President Martinez asked. 200 ships, Admiral Chen reported. All larger than anything in our fleet. That is twice what our intelligence predicted, Queen Zarathiel said. Jake stared at the enemy fleet and felt the ancient memories stirring in his mind. They are not just here to fight us. This is an execution fleet. They plan to make an example of us for the rest of the galaxy. Can we win? President Martinez asked. Not with conventional tactics. Jake moved to a special control station that had been built for him. But we are not using conventional tactics. He placed his hands on the interface and felt the ancient weapon systems come online. Energy flowed through his implants and into the ship's weapons. On screens around the bridge, targeting displays showed the enemy fleet in perfect detail. What is our range? He asked. They are still too far, Admiral Chen said. We need to get closer. No, we do not. Jake's implants glowed brighter. Ancient weapons do not work like normal weapons. They target the quantum structure of enemy ships. Distance does not matter. President Martinez looked at Queen Zarathiel. Is he right? According to the technical specifications, yes. But Jake, firing the weapon at full power will require more energy than your implants were designed to handle. I know. It could kill you. I know that too. The hegemony fleet was getting closer. Energy weapons began firing across the darkness of space. The first few shots missed, but more would follow. "Morrison," President Martinez said, "is there another way?" Jake looked at her with his one human eye. For a moment he seemed like his old self again. "There is always another way, Madam President, but not always a better way. This weapon can disable their entire fleet in one shot, but someone has to stay connected to guide it. How long? Long enough for you to get away. Long enough for the word to spread that the hegemony can be beaten." Queen Zarathiel stepped forward. "Jake, you have given enough. Let someone else make the sacrifice this time." "This is not about sacrifice, Your Majesty. This is about capability. I am the only one here who can interface with ancient technology. The implants make me the weapon as much as the ship." Enemy fire struck the Liberty's shields. The whole ship shook. "Madam President," Admiral Chen called, "we need to make a decision. They are targeting our command ship." President Martinez looked around the bridge. Human and Valtheran officers worked side by side, preparing for a battle they might not survive. Jake had made this cooperation possible. Now he was asking for the chance to make it permanent. "Do it," she said. Jake nodded and placed both hands fully on the interface. His implants blazed with light as ancient technology flowed through his body and into the ship's weapons. On the main screen, energy began building around the Liberty's forward section. Not the familiar blue of human weapons or the green of Valtheran weapons, but something completely different. A silver light that seemed to bend space around itself. "Target the command ship first," Jake said. His voice was no longer human at all. "Then the weapons platforms. Save the support vessels for last." "Jake," Queen Zarathiel said, "remember who you are." "I remember, Your Majesty. I am Jake Morrison. I am human, and I am going to save my friends." The ancient weapon fired. Silver energy crossed the space between fleets instantly. When it struck the hegemony command ship, the massive vessel simply stopped. No explosion, no fire. It just went dark and began drifting. "Target the next ship," Jake commanded. But the light from his implants was getting brighter and more dangerous. The weapon fired again and again. Each shot disabled another enemy vessel. The hegemony fleet, which had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, was helpless against technology they had forgotten existed. But Jake was burning out. Smoke was rising from his implants. The smell of burning electronics filled the bridge. "Jake!" Queen Zarathiel ran to his side. "That is enough. We can handle the rest with conventional weapons." "No," Jake said through gritted teeth. "Have to finish it. Have to make sure they cannot follow you." The ancient weapon fired one last time, a massive burst of silver energy that struck every remaining hegemony ship at once. The entire enemy fleet went dark. Jake collapsed. President Martinez and Queen Zarathiel knelt beside him. His implants were sparking and smoking. His red eye had gone dark, but his human eye was still open. "Did we win?" he asked weakly. "We won," the Queen said, tears running down her face. "Good. That is good." Jake smiled. "Tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them that humans and Valtherans fought together. Tell them that old enemies can become new friends." "You tell them, Jake, you are going to be fine," but Jake shook his head. "I was already dead, remember? I just got to borrow some extra time." He looked around the bridge at the human and Valtheran officers working together. "This is what I wanted to see. This makes it worth it." Jake Morrison closed his eyes and was still. The battle was over. The hegemony fleet drifted powerless in space. But the real victory was just beginning. News of the joint human-Valtheran triumph spread across the galaxy within days. Other young species who had lived in fear of the hegemony began reaching out to each other. Trade agreements were signed. Defense pacts were formed. Cultural exchanges began. The ancient races started emerging from hiding, sharing their knowledge with species they judged worthy. The galaxy began to change in ways no one had imagined possible. 3 months later, Queen Zarathiel stood before a monument on New Terra, the first joint human-Valtharan colony. The monument was simple, just like Jake would have wanted. A stone pillar with his name and the words he had lived by. Some things are worth dying for, but most things are worth living for. President Martinez stood beside her as children from both species played together in the colony's central park. "Do you think he knew?" Martinez asked. "That this would happen?" "I think Jake Morrison knew that if you do the right thing for the right reasons, good things follow, even if you do not live to see them. The Council wants to name the new Space Academy after him. He would hate that, but he would love what it represents. Queen Zarathiel touched the scar on her face, the one she had